Clara never imagined that her life would one day change this way. She was an ordinary woman, a discreet link in the great tangle of the city. Working as an assistant in a small architectural firm in a busy city, she got up every morning with the same routine. A quick coffee, a crowded subway ride, and greeting clients in the bustle of the office. The city, with its frantic pace, sometimes seemed to swallow him up in its rush. Her dreams were simple, modest, but always hopeful: a comfortable life, a peaceful home, and a solid love with Javier. Javier, her companion, was everything to her. They had met during their university studies and, since then, their love had become a haven of peace in the middle of the urban storm. Their life together was marked by simplicity and solidarity, each shared moment strengthening their bond. However, a dream persisted in Clara's mind: to give Javier an engagement ring worthy of the name. She often imagined it, this ring, dazzling with diamonds, symbolizing the deep commitment they shared. But, deep down, she knew that this dream was far from reality. Their daily life was made up of sacrifices and small savings, and the idea of one day being able to afford such luxury seemed almost unrealizable. One sunny spring afternoon, while on her way to an important meeting with a client in the city center, Clara's life took a turn she never anticipated. The sun was shining high in the sky, and the city streets were bustling, as always. The noise of cars, passers-by, and discussions mingled with the clicking of the heels of the women in a hurry. Clara walked quickly, her leather bag clutched to her, focused on her goal: to arrive on time, give her presentation and go home. But as she was crossing a small passage, she saw a scene that made her stop in her tracks. An old lady, probably in her 70s, was standing on the sidewalk, staring into space. Her grey hair was tangled under an old-fashioned scarf, and her coat, although well-made, seemed a little too big for her. She seemed distraught, probably searching for her way or waiting for someone who never came. The image of this solitary old lady, lost in the hustle and bustle of the city, aroused deep empathy in Clara. She approached her, ready to offer some of her time, something she often did with strangers in need. She wasn't one to turn away when she saw someone in distress, even if she didn't know that person. She gently placed a hand on the lady's shoulder. "Madam, are you okay?" The old lady looked at her in surprise, her clear eyes widening as she realized that a young woman was speaking to her. But before Clara even had time to say another word, a heavy noise was heard behind her. A man was approaching them, his steps quick and his gaze shifty. Clara, instinctively, tensed up. Something about his attitude seemed fishy. He was well dressed, but he gave off that menacing energy that is often found in those looking for easy prey. The man suddenly stopped a few steps from the old lady, and, with a brutal gesture, tried to grab her handbag. Clara, her heart beating wildly, reacts without thinking. With a burst of courage, she firmly grabbed the attacker's arm and pushed him away with a strength she didn't know she had, shouting for help in a loud voice. The attacker, in a panic, dropped the bag and hurried away towards the busy streets. Clara found herself alone with the old lady, both panting. The situation had happened so quickly that she had no time to realize the magnitude of what she had just done. She glanced at the bag, which had now fallen onto the pavement, before turning to the old lady, who still seemed in shock. "Are you well, ma'am?" Clara asked, her tone calmer now that the danger had passed. The old lady stared at Clara with grateful eyes, her lips trembling with gratitude. She took a moment to catch her breath, then, in a soft but firm voice, she said,
"I owe you my life, dear young woman.
How can I thank you for what you have just done for me?"
You not only saved my bag, you saved me."
Clara, still overcome with emotion, felt warmth invade her heart. She had acted on instinct, without thinking about the seriousness of the situation, but hearing these words from this lady touched her deeply. "That's okay, ma'am," Clara replied with a modest smile. "I'm just doing the right thing." But the lady didn't see it that way. A few days after their meeting, Clara received an elegant and unexpected invitation. The envelope, a deep purple, bore golden seals and a subtle scent that already evoked opulence and exclusivity. Intrigued, Clara, who had never imagined finding herself one day in such a context, went to the indicated location. A majestic mansion, isolated outside the city, hidden in a green setting where every detail seemed to be a work of art. The castle-like mansion was surrounded by meticulously tended gardens, where the perfectly sculpted hedges seemed to defy time itself. At the entrance, a large carved wooden door, decorated with wrought iron, opened onto a grandiose hall. The walls were decorated with ancestral portraits and precious art paintings, creating an atmosphere that was both majestic and intimidating. Clara felt almost a stranger in this incredibly rich setting, her footsteps echoing on the cold marble floor. The welcome was as elegant as the setting. Isabelle Montclar, the owner of the place, was waiting for him. With a natural presence, this woman, probably in her 70s, wore an impeccable suit, her white hair carefully styled in a modern cut, and her piercing gaze seemed to analyze every detail of Clara, as if she perceived something deep in her. Isabelle was much more than just a billionaire. She was a respected figure in the business world, a quiet but influential philanthropist, and a pillar of major social and political dynamics. His name resonated in high society circles, not only because of his wealth, but also because of his bold choices in the world of industry and culture. After courteous exchanges, where Isabelle's kindness mixed with an obvious curiosity for Clara, they shared a sumptuous dinner in a dining room decorated with sparkling candlesticks and fine porcelain tableware. The meal lived up to the place, refined dishes, served with military precision, accompanied by rare wines, all carefully chosen for their finesse. Clara, although flattered by this invitation, felt a little out of place. The contrast between her modest world and this unparalleled wealth hit her hard. During dinner, Isabelle, in a soft but firm voice, spoke about the incident on the sidewalk. "I can't let you go without expressing my gratitude," she said. "You saved me, but that's not all. You showed something rare, precious. In a world where everything seems to depend on appearances, you showed a courage, a humility which are uncommon qualities." Clara, uncomfortable, tried to politely refuse. "Really, ma'am, it was nothing. I just acted instinctively. It was nothing." But Isabelle did not seem willing to accept such a refusal. She stood up gracefully and walked over to an open chest. From there, she took out a small velvet box, which she handed to Clara. "I want to give you something," she said, an enigmatic smile floating on her lips. "It's a modest gift compared to what you deserve." Clara hesitated for a moment, feeling even more foreign in this luxurious world. When she opened the box, she discovered a ring of almost supernatural brilliance, a pure diamond that seemed to capture all the light in the room. The ring, incredibly beautiful, was not just a piece of jewelry. It was a masterpiece. "She's magnificent," Clara breathed, captivated. "But I can't accept." Isabelle gently placed a hand on hers, holding her back. "This is exactly what you must accept, Clara. You have shown bravery that far exceeds what many would have done in your situation. This ring is a symbol of your courage.
You are a rare woman, a woman who acts from heart.
And that deserves to be recognized." Clara, trapped by the kindness of the old lady, felt moved, but also destabilized by this world of luxury and attention which seemed so foreign to her. She was just a simple assistant, a woman with moderate dreams, and this ring, of inestimable value, seemed to belong to a world in which she was not even a guest. But she didn't have the heart to refuse any longer. "Thank you," she said, almost in a whisper. But she didn't yet know that this meeting would mark the start of an adventure that would change her life forever. Isabelle, in addition to being a woman of power, was an influential matriarch, a pillar of the society in which she lived. She had vast investments in several industries, from fashion to oil to finance, and her decisions affected thousands of lives around the world. But behind her apparent coldness hid a deep humanity, and she began to take a liking to Clara. Very quickly, she became a regular figure in his life, not only for his heroic actions, but also for his simplicity and natural wisdom. As they met, Clara learned that Isabelle had a grandson, Julien Montclar, a brilliant and charming young man, but whose life seemed governed by overwhelming expectations of perfection. Julien was the designated heir to the Montclar empire, but he had never found his place in this world of luxury and pressure. Successes and accolades seemed empty to him, and despite his accomplishments at prestigious institutions, he still felt lost, searching for a deeper meaning that eluded his family and his surroundings. One evening, after several meetings with Isabel, Clara met Julian. Their first conversation was very banal, talking about the weather and their respective activities, but quickly, a deeper bond was forged between them. Julian, who had always lived in a world where superficiality and competition were the norm, was struck by Clara's humanity. She sought nothing more than to live according to her principles, without compromise. She didn't let herself get caught in the trap of pretense. For Julian, it was a rarity that he had never encountered in his circle. "I don't know what it is about you, Clara," he said one evening, after they had talked for hours, "but there's something so true about you. You're not like everyone else here." He looked at her for a long time, as if he was finally seeing her for the first time. And in his eyes, Clara saw something different. Not just interest, but a deep connection, an admiration he had never shared with anyone. Clara felt inexplicably attracted to Julian, not by his wealth or status, but by the intensity he exuded. For the first time, she saw beyond appearances. And without knowing it, she had just embarked on a journey that would shake up her certainties and redefine her place in the world. As the weeks went by, Clara and Julian grew closer, a growing bond developing between them with each meeting. Their discussions, at first superficial and full of formalities, became more and more profound. Julian confided in Clara as he had never done with anyone. He spoke to her about his frustrations with the constant pressure his family placed on him, his doubts and his dreams crushed under the expectations of his inheritance. Clara listened attentively, offering her understanding and sincerity in return. In her eyes, Julian found a glimmer of authenticity that he had never encountered before. For him, Clara was not a simple office assistant. She was a breath of fresh air in a world suffocating with pretense. He admired her for her simplicity, her natural beauty, and her lack of pretension. She wasn't trying to impress him, she wasn't pretending to be someone else, and it was this purity that captivated him. For her part, Clara, although aware of the difference in social status between them, could not deny the attraction she felt for him. He was much more than a billionaire heir, much more than what outsiders saw. Julian had a depth that she had not encountered in her own life, and she felt drawn to it like a magnet. However, a cloud of doubt persisted in Julian's mind. His heart, although fully committed to Clara, knew that the road ahead was not paved with roses. His family, particularly his grandmother, Dame Isabel, had very specific expectations for him. He had always been presented with women from high society, elegant, strategic women with the right connections. Women who were ready to play the game of appearances and alliances to keep the Montclair name at the top. Clara, on the other hand, was not that type of woman. She came from a modest background, she had no title or influential network, and her world seemed so far removed from the one in which Julian had grown up. These differences, although invisible to him, weighed heavily on his mind. One autumn afternoon, while the cool wind blew gently between the trees of a private park, Clara and Julian met for a walk out of sight. The park, isolated and quiet, offered Julian the respite he needed. He had often dreamed of a time when he could finally be himself, without the expectations imposed by his family and his name. But as they walked side by side, a certain tension settled in the air. Julian knew this moment was inevitable. He needed to confide his feelings to Clara, to shed light on the dilemmas that had tormented him since their first meeting. Stopping at the edge of a small pond, he looked at her for a long time, his eyes filled with new determination.
Clara, I think I've fallen in love with you.
The words were simple, but their weight was immense. There was a brief silence before he continued, his voice darkening slightly. But I know it's not easy. My family has a very strict vision of what I should be, and you don't match what they imagine. They wouldn't understand, and I don't know if I have the strength to question everything to choose you. Clara, struck by the sincerity of his words, felt her heart beat faster. She had never envisaged such a confession from Julian. She had always known he felt something for her, but the reality of that statement overwhelmed her. She, a simple assistant in an architectural firm, faced with a man of such lineage, of such wealth. It was like an unreal dream, a situation she never thought possible. Yet, deep inside her, a voice told her that she felt the same way about him. She looked down, feeling the weight of the situation crushing her. "I'm not what your family expects, Julian," she replied, her voice trembling despite herself. "And I wouldn't want to put you in a difficult situation. You deserve someone who meets their expectations, who fits into their world." His words were laced with doubt and uncertainty. She knew that their differences in social status could cause them more problems than they could imagine. She was aware of this world to which she did not belong and which seemed so distant. For her, being with Julian meant more than just a romantic relationship. It meant risking losing everything, coming up against a world of prejudices and pressures that she was not ready to face. But Julian, whose determination had continued to grow as he understood the depth of his feelings for Clara, did not let her escape so easily. "I never believed in arranged marriages, or my family's expectations," he said, moving a little closer to her.
I want to be with you, Clara.
"No matter what they think. No matter the pressure or the weight of their inheritance. You are the only person who truly makes me happy, and I don't want to let this chance slip away." Clara, although touched by his words, could not help but ask herself 1,000 questions. She knew that love was not always enough to break the chains of social conventions. Their relationship risked causing waves, causing irreparable ruptures. But at the same time, she saw the authenticity of the love that Julian offered her, and she realized that, despite everything, he was not like the other men she had known. Maybe they could create something new, something entirely their own, without the weight of external expectations. "But you can't just erase a lifetime of rules and traditions," Clara whispered, almost to herself. "You're going to have to fight for this. And I'm not sure we're ready for that kind of fight." Julian took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on her.
I will fight.
"For you, for us. I will not let anything or anyone separate us. I want us to take this journey together, no matter what it takes." Clara felt a shiver run down her spine. There was no going back. This decision, whatever it was, would change them forever. But part of her knew that she too had made her choice. The obstacles seemed insurmountable, but in his heart, a flame burned with hope, that of a love that could, despite everything, conquer all. Their hands brushed against each other, and in this discreet gesture, there was the promise of a future that they would write together, a future where courage, love, and truth would be the only guides. After several months of hiding, a relationship based on secrets, furtive meetings, and whispered promises, Clara and Julian made a bold and risky decision. They had been linked by love, but also by fear of the consequences of their union. But ultimately, the desire to live their lives together, to no longer hide behind masks, to no longer play this shadow game, won out. They decided to marry in secret. The decision for this union did not come without internal turmoil. Isabel, although understanding towards Julian's sincere feelings, had doubts. She knew that this marriage, although an act of rebellion against imposed expectations, risked breaking family bonds and leading to far wider repercussions than they imagined. She also knew that she was not in a position to stop Julian, and that her role would be more to support and understand her grandson, even if the story of their marriage risked upsetting the peace that the Montclair family had carefully built over the decades. The ceremony, discreet and intimate, took place out of sight. Clara wore a simple white dress, without the frills and extravagances one might expect from marrying into such an influential family. The soft, light fabric hugged her curves without overdoing it, as if to symbolize the humility of the love she shared with Julian. Julian, for his part, opted for a sober but elegant suit. He did not need all the pomp to symbolize the commitment he was making. He knew that the main thing lay in the heart, not in appearances. They held hands, surrounded by a few close friends and Isabel, the only family figure present, and this ceremony took place in the greatest discretion. There was no champagne or grandiose party, only an exchange of sincere wishes between two souls determined to go through life together. But despite the palpable happiness that united the couple, the weight of the secret quickly began to be felt. The outside world, with its expectations and judgments, gradually interfered in their daily lives. The couple struggled against both the social demands of high society and the constraints imposed by family obligations. Julian, at every moment of doubt, was torn between his role as heir, the one he was supposed to be in the eyes of his family, and his love for Clara, a woman who represented everything he desired but who he knew was perceived as inappropriate by those who controlled his life. Every public event he had to go to alone, without her, became a reminder of the distance they had to maintain between themselves and the world. For Clara, the situation was even more difficult. She was not only the wife of an heir, she also had to carry the burden of anonymity. She felt suffocated by the pressure of hiding such an important part of her life. She had the impression of living a two-speed existence, where each moment of happiness shared with Julian was accompanied by a sword of Damocles hanging above their heads. But despite this constant pressure, their love only grew. In times of doubt, loneliness, and frustration, they supported each other. The secret marriage became their refuge, their place of peace and truth, a space where they could be themselves, without expectations and judgments. They were both aware that their relationship, although strong and authentic, was perceived as an act of rebellion. However, they did not let this fact prevent them from fully living their love, from asserting themselves in their daily lives despite the impossibility of showing their union in broad daylight. But the weight of the secret eventually becomes unbearable. After a major public event that Julian had to attend alone, he made a decision that would change their lives forever. During a family dinner, while the conversations revolved around family affairs, Julian could no longer contain what he had kept inside him for a long time. He stood up, paused, then calmly announced, "I have something important to tell you." Silence immediately fell in the room. Julian felt the pressure building inside him, but he was no longer afraid. He looked in turn at the members of his family, his parents, his cousins, before continuing, "I'm married, and my wife's name is Clara." The reaction was not long in coming. It was a total shock. Anger, incomprehension, surprise, all mixed together in the faces of his family members. They didn't understand. How could a Montclar, heir to such a prestigious lineage, marry a woman like Clara? A woman without a name, without social status, without the qualities that the family considered essential. They had imagined a future in which Julian would marry a woman from their background, a woman who would consolidate the influence of the Montclar family and perpetuate the tradition. However, in the midst of this tumult, a voice rose. Isabel, with her wise and caring look, supported her grandson. She had seen the love between Clara and Julian. She had seen how happy they were together. She knew that love could not submit to the rules imposed by society, to the rigid traditions of a family which, sometimes, forgot that true strength lies in human bonds, and not in appearances. Isabel took Julian's hand, and in a silence heavy with meaning, she said to him, "I did not choose the easy way for you, but I believe in your happiness. If it is with Clara, then she will be a Montclar in her own right." Over the following weeks and months, Julian's family had to accept the reality of the situation. Acceptance did not come immediately, but little by little, the Montclar family came to understand that sincere and authentic love could not be ignored. Julian, for his part, learned to assert his choice and face reality. The couple managed to find their place in a world that had been slow to accept them, but once they did, they became an example of courage, truth, and resilience. The secrecy of their marriage, which began as an escape from social expectations, transformed into a force that united them further. Clara, who had long lived in the shadow of this union, finally felt accepted, not for what she was supposed to be, but for what she really was. She no longer carried the label of the wife of. She was Clara Montclar, a dignified woman, capable of facing challenges, and above all, a woman who had found love in the most difficult conditions. Their secret marriage, initially a struggle against expectations and conventions, was now the foundation of a strong and authentic relationship, built on trust, love, and truth, and nothing could separate them again.